Welcome into NHL Tonight, first shift for Wednesday, March the 5th, 2025. E.J. Raddick alongside Bill Lindsay, just 2 days away from the trade deadline. Clock is ticking.
It is.
Clock is ticking.
Team's getting active already, though.
Getting active. We had a
busy.
deal today, but before we get to that, J.D. Lindbergh is back. Welcome back, J.D. Welcome back.
Thank you, Ish. Did you have a nice couple days with a real producer back here taking care
come on,
of you?
come on.
Shout out Jimmy Glenn and Chris Collins. They did a great job.
They did, and it was both nice of them to come on and to jump on the the producer cam there. But you're our guy, so welcome back. And the parlay did not connect yesterday, so.
I think the people at DraftKings might they saw me giving out too many winners.
That's
They've
right.
been trying to avoid me on Tuesdays.
Yeah. They've asked for your schedule to be changed.
Winner, chicken dinner. You're all the time, right, JD?
Hey, hopefully it keeps
Plugged
rolling
in.
here during the Ides of March.
All right. Well, let's get to it. Let's get to first things first, because we did have a trade. The Tampa Bay Lightning getting involved, and I guess everybody kind of speculated that the Lightning could reacquire Yanni Gourde. Remember, he was a big star. I mean, he was an important player. I shouldn't say big star, but an important player on their team. They won the 2 cups. They get Yanni Gourde, Bjorkstrand, and a pick, and then they put that board back up. I mean, this is significant. I mean, they send a first-round pick in 26, which everybody thinks is a great draft.
Who needs picks?
A first-round pick in 27 and a second-rounder in 2025. That's Toronto's pick. And Michael Eyssimont as well. I mean, that's a significant haul for Yanni Gourde and Oliver Bjorkstrand. Gourde's contract is up. He's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year. I believe Bjorkstrand has a year left. That's a lot to get, but the Lightning are trying to get back to the top.
They gave up 2 first-round picks for Brandon Hagel.
That's
How'd
right.
that work out?
It worked out really good.
Pretty well.
But do you think either of those guys is Brandon Hagel?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
The way they've drafted in the
Yeah.
future with Braden Point, third round, picking up free agents and undrafted, Julian Brisebois finds ways to make it
But
work.
they're looking to win now,
and
right?
keep the window open.
As they should.
How long's this window been open in a cap era? This is the longest that we've seen it open. Yanni Gourde comes back, Oliver Bjorkstrand, and they were missing a few pieces in that top line.
Because you just saw the Lightning the other night against the Panthers. It was a really good game. It was 2-1. Your Panthers held on to win, and I think it had been hit the post at the end of the game, and it could have tied the game and sent it to overtime. But, like, you watch the Lightning. Think of the Lightning now with these acquisitions. I mean, obviously, they're a stronger team.
Yes, and you have the big line with Point, Kucherov, and Gensel, and then you have Cirelli and Hagel, and Gergensons was up there. They went with 11 forwards and 7 defensemen in the game against Florida, and all of a sudden the rotation, once it got late into the second period, is that Gergensons dropped down, and all of a sudden Point or Kucherov would play with their normal line, and then Hagel and Cirelli would go out, and Kucherov or Point would go out with that line. As
kind of double shift.
Yeah, double shift, and that became a bit of a problem. So you got Bjorkstrand, who could fit in well with Hagel and Cirelli.
Yeah.
They can drive offense. And then Yanni Gourde, if you look, Shafee I don't mind as a player.
Yeah.
He's done decent. He can keep in there. Nick Paul's having a really good year. And Yanni Gourde really solidifies that third line. You give up Eyssimont, but you got plenty of players that can dip down into that fourth line. They needed that added depth. That's where it's going to happen. And I like the moves, and I like the aggressiveness, and it's a better team. Without this addition, from what I saw, this is a much dangerous team than last year's Tampa Bay team. They're a firm contender, and the main reason is the 5-on-5 play. Last year, a minus 19 goal differential at 5-on-5. Going into last night's game, they were at a plus 26, and that only got up. And you look at the year that Hagel is 4th in the NHL in even strength points.
Wow.
Draisaitl, McKinnon, Pasternak. That's the company that Hagel's keeping. So you get a legitimate player like Bjorkstrand or Gourde, whoever wants to play along that wing, to add to that lineup. Defensive responsibility. Gourde comes back. He knows John Cooper. He knows the system.
Yeah.
What to be done.
It's an easy fit. I mean, he's coming off an injury. He played last night. He seems like, he's going to be okay. That's what they're banking on. They got to hope. He had that sports hernia thing. You never, sports hernia, you never be 100% sure. I mean, those things can flare up. Hopefully he's going to be okay. But they're taking a shot, and they're bold. And I always say you got to, in this sport.
Fortune favors the bold.
Well said. It does. I mean, Vegas is bold. They've won cup, right? Florida was bold. They're bold again this year. They won a cup. I mean, you have to be bold in this league, take chances. The Washington Capitals took some chances this year. They're right near the top of the league this year in terms of their regular season play. So sometimes you've got to take some shots. Yep. They've got, as you point out, they still got Hedman, they still got Vasilevsky, they still got
Point,
Kucherov, these guys.
And the core.
And they're right there. They put the standings up. Maybe throw them up one more time, JD, the standings in that division. I mean, it's tight at the top. If the Lightning would have rallied in that game, forced overtime, they'd be even tighter to that. And Toronto's 8-1-1 in their last 10, and they're hanging on by a thread to the top spot.
So imagine if the Lightning won that head-to-head matchup with the Panthers, they would be at 78 points, and you would drop the Panthers down to 77. That's right. How important those in-season games are. The company they keep those head-to-head matchups. The Lightning are for real. Toronto, can they get out of the playoffs? You want to avoid the 2-3.
Yeah.
Winning the division is going to mean something. Atlantic, hotly contested. Toronto believes they're better. Florida believes they have another chance. And Tampa Bay, all of a sudden, okay, we weren't quite as good last year. We moved Stamkos out. We get Gensel. It proved to be a prudent decision. And John Cooper, the coach, always gets the best out of his players.
Yeah.
Doesn't he? I mean, it hasn't won a Jack Adams. But when you watch and you look down the roster,
he's won a couple cups.
Yeah,
so
he'll take the hardware.
He'll get by.
But
he'll get by.
When I evaluate coaches and I go down the roster, does he get the most out of his players? And the answer almost every time with John Cooper is absolutely yes. And it's been rotating and rotating year after year after that first Stanley Cup win.
Two quick things, and we'll put a bow on this with the Lightning that I just finished with here, is that, first of all, I would say it shows that this is a seller's market. I mean, they got significant assets in Seattle back to get those picks back. That's, so if you're the Islanders and you're thinking about moving Brock Nelson, who was a bigger asset, I mean, you got to get at least 2 first-rounders now based on this, right? So that's interesting. And also the Toronto Maple Leafs, you're on the clock because Florida made a big move. Tampa's made a move. You'll see what Brad Treliving decides to do. So let's get to some of the things that went on last night. Thomas Harley, the Devils are playing the Stars, a really good game. The Devils rally. It's late in the game. And then look at this. This is a killer for a Devils team that struggled of late. Thomas Harley at the buzzer! Dallas wins it in regulation, Billy.
Oh, and they've been so good since the start of the calendar year, has Dallas, even with the injuries to Sagan and Heiskanen. They roll along, and Thomas Harley has been the main factor on defense. Win a face-off on a controversial play, but they get the face-off win, and you see the game-winning goal late in regulation. That really hurts the New Jersey Devils and what they're trying to get done. And Dougie Hamilton goes down with an injury in that game. What's going to be his status? Doesn't look good for Jack Hughes. And if you're a Devil fan or any kind of fan base and you see 5 seconds on the clock and we lose a game, you're just like, oh my gosh, did that point really slip away at the end like that for us? And when you're confident like a team like Dallas, things like that happen, good things happen.
They're playing well right now,
Yes, they are feeling it. On the New Jersey side, even that Thomas Harley shot was decent and Markstrom back in the net, you'd still like that save probably at the end of the game as well.
Granlund got a good screen in there for Dallas, and he won the faceoff as well. He's been a nice acquisition for the Stars, coming over from San Jose. He played well for Finland at the Four Nations faceoff, so playing well. But you mentioned there's a little bit of controversy at the end of the game because you can see it here. Kovacevic is going to come up number 8 in white. He doesn't quite get that center red. And the linesman, I think appropriately, called icing there. And so now you have a face-off in the offensive zone with 14.7 seconds left. And then, of course, this is the result of that. I mean, I know we've been going back and forth on it. Like, for me, that was just icing. He didn't get there, but give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I would agree with you. You made a great point when we were talking off air, is that's how you're taught to play the game. You're forced to deny the red line.
Defend the red line. And the Stars player got up there and made it hard for Kovacevic.
Yes.
And Kovacevic just a little short, dumped it in, and the linesman was on it, and he called the icing. I just think that, that's the way the game is supposed to be played. Defend the blue, defend the red, defend your own blue. And that's why you do it.
And the only argument you could have is does the Dallas player have a true opportunity to play the puck?
Yeah.
I would say no, because it's banked off the boards.
Yeah.
Maybe if you knock it out of there, but it's not a true opportunity because the puck's in the air, it's banked off the boards. It does go down for icing, and he is a few feet short of the red line, and it's a correct call by the linesman. It's a tough job to do.
Yeah.
Refereeing refereeing, being a linesman, whatever.
Yeah.
And they make the right call more often than not.
Yeah, I thought he got it right.
It was pretty spot on.
And at the end of the day, win the face-off and kill off those final seconds.
And so there's the little attention to details by a Dallas team that's extremely hot. Okay, it's still late in the game, but you're still playing to your game plan. Once they come to that red line, I want to force you before you get to that red line, and it's only a couple of feet. But those 2 feet made a wild of difference in the end when you win that face-off and pull off the victory.
It was worth 2 points
It was.
last night. So the Dallas Stars win. The Devils are waiting what happens with Jack Hughes. We'll keep you posted on that. He's missed a couple games with that injury. Here's news from the Columbus Blue Jackets. Ollie's here to stay. They re-signed Matthew Olivier, who's had a terrific year for them. He's a tough guy. He's been providing offense. 6-year contract extension. I believe it's $3 million per, so a nice deal in terms of term for Olivier, who he brings that physical play night after night after night.
You think maybe one of the toughest customers in the NHL at this point. Down deep in the corners, and I would not want to go down deep in the corner with Olivier. I saw him score that goal in the outdoor game. He's got some decent hands on him. It does have 12 goals on the season and kills penalties, which cannot be overlooked. It's not a guy that's a pure fourth.
Look at the bottom there, Billy, right? Second in hits, 232 hits, and 11 fighting majors. So he's putting it on the line night after night for a Blue Jackets team that's been a great story this year.
If anyone is rooting against the Columbus Blue Jackets, don't come to me because who could root against that team? And they've done everything correct, and was actually kind of hearing like everything that went on with the Gaudreau brothers, and then coming into this year and what was going to have to happen. Well, Dean Nevison, the coach, said to him, what I've been heard, not with full accuracy, was, I got to let this team have fun this year.
Yeah.
The first thing, that they have to enjoy their time at the rink.
Yeah.
So he wanted to impart on them, we're going to score.
Yeah.
We're going to score, and that's been the case. They've been leaky defensively and not as good on the road, but at home, and they have let the horses run, and they can score. They can score with the best of them. Zach Werenski, the goaltender, Marchenko is having a fabulous year. So credit to John Hines, the whole organization, realizing, or not John Hines, sorry, Dean Nevison. We were just talking Minnesota. But for Dean Nevison to go into there and realize this has to be fun. We have to enjoy our experience. And that's what's happened. And there is a smile on the face when the Columbus Blue Jackets come to the rink in a very, very trying year. Yeah, and didn't go so well last night. I mean, the playoff chase in that for the wild card spots in the East has been, as you look at, here's the results from last night. I mean, so the Bruins are still hanging around, although they're selling right now. I think that that's a game they should win against Nashville. They get blown out at home. That's not good. Red Wings lose a nail-biter to the Hurricanes. Blue Jackets lose, as we just talked about, a Lightning are a really good team. And then the Islanders surprised last night, beating the Jets, second of a back-to-back for the Islanders after a tough loss to the Rangers at the Garden. So the result of all this is the Rangers are now in a playoff spot along with the Blue Jackets. You can see it right there. Red Wings are out by a tiebreaker. The Rangers have something to keep in mind here. They have a lot of these regulation wins, and so they have an advantage. If they get a tiebreaker, they're going to win the tiebreaker most likely. But right now they're there. The Senators at 65. Canadians have been playing great. They're at 65. Bruins still at 64. Like, the Bruins are 2 points back. The Islanders somehow are only 3 points back, and the Flyers are just 4 points back. So, I mean, this is a crazy race in the Eastern Conference. So 2 teams are eliminated.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh and Buffalo.
Yeah.
The rest is alive.
Yeah.
Of 16 teams, you got 14 teams with a quarter left of the season.
Crazy.
But a lot can happen in 20 games. And down the stretch.
And, you know, for the Islanders, they had the great win last night against Winnipeg. And they're only 3 points back, but we're not sure what's going to happen. What's Lou Lamoriello going to do with, you know, some like Palmieri or Brock Nelson? Nelson was great last night. And after the game, he sat down with Shannon Hogan on the bench. They do the interview that they play for the fans there, and it was also on the MSG Network, and I watched it. And boy, I was getting emotional. It reminded me of both from Shannon, who covered Brock for a long time, and for Brock, who's grown up on Long Island and has family, you know, young family and everything. Just take a listen and listen for the emotion here between these two in this interview.
Just worried about playing the game. That's about it. Yeah, I think it was just a testament to the no quit. We had a tough one last night. We talked about a response. Great job by Lindsay setting the tone there. That was a big fight, standing up for us, and just sending a message. And tough back-to-back. It's a really good team. It's a big win for us. Everything. I mean, all of it. I think it's a great place, great fans.
Yeah, and so he was emotional. You see, he was getting choked up. Shannon Hogan, I got to give hats off. I think that's a tough thing. Go on that bench and ask some hard questions to a guy like, this could be it for you. And she asked those questions, and she was emotional. He got emotional. You can see here Brock Nelson, what he's meant to the Islanders here. 4th in games, just past a friend of yours, Bobby Nystrom, who played 900 games for the Islanders. 5th in goals, 8th in points, 10th in power play goals, 3rd in game-winning goals. He was the first-round pick back in 2010. And so, this is a guy who's grown up there with this franchise for the last, 15 years. And, this might be it for him. I mean, they go out west now. Maybe they'll make the trade. But I'll tell you what, the Islanders, you just saw what they got for Gord and Bjorkstrand, 2 first-round picks, a second-round pick. If the Islanders are trading Brock Nelson, they better get significant assets in return. And I'm talking about a good young player maybe that can play now, and maybe that got first-round pick as well. So the market it's certainly a seller's market right now. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, does Lou Lamoriello go out and pull the trigger on Brock Nelson? They do have a lot of players there that have been lifetime Islanders for a long time, and it does mean a lot to him. You can see the emotion with Brock Nelson when you're familiar with one franchise and pour your heart and soul in it for that long. It does get emotional when your name gets mentioned in trade rumors. It becomes tough, but part of the business. You look at the roster, though, there does have to be some changeover to get younger and to get some more assets at some point. You can't stay stagnant, kind of in the middle ground, get into the playoffs, lose in the first round, has sort of been the theme for the New York Islanders. They do enough because of that veteran leadership and players to stay around the playoff picture. At some point, they haven't fared well in recent drafts as far as getting players.
They haven't had picks. I mean, they've traded away picks to kind of stay afloat, which hurts them. I mean, you go all the way back to John Tavares, right? When he left, they didn't get anything for him.
But this has even Bridgeport's bad.
Yeah, no, that's right. You're right.
Like New York Islanders around, but Bridgeport, you go down into the farm system. I was doing it. We had the Islander game a while ago, and I was looking down into the farm system wondering, there's not much down there. You can't just go down and say, trade Brock Nelson. You're right. A good young player coming back, maybe some first-round picks. You have to get some assets. There has to be a changeover of the guard, however they want to do it on the island. It doesn't have to be fast. It doesn't have to be immediate, but you would like it to be fairly quick with some of these players that are still aging out to get younger, impactful players that are going to mean something. And if Brock Nelson goes, hopefully you get players that are going to come back into your system at a younger age and that are going to be Islanders, not for a short time, but for longer periods of time, 6, 7 years, and sort of reshape this culture of the club. Yeah, so we'll see what happens. But an emotional interview with Brock Nelson and Shannon Hogan. And again, I say Shannon did a great job. He's a class act, Brock Nelson. And Brock Nelson just comes to play. That's it. And he's played 3 consecutive 30-goal years. Here's the look at Wednesday's schedule. You see 5 games on the slate. TNT's got 2 of them. They got the Rangers and Capitals at the Garden, 7:30, 10 o'clock. Golden Knights and Leafs. That's a good schedule right there from TNT. You got some other good games. Hawks and Senators, Ducks and Canucks. Ducks trying to push up. Canucks trying to get back into a playoff spot. And the Blues and the Kings coming up as well. We got a tweet here about this one from Elliot Friedman from the Vancouver Canucks coach. Rick Tocchet says Quinn Hughes will not play tonight against the Ducks. Tweaked something versus the Kraken on the weekend. He did not play in the last part of that game, so that is something to keep in mind for the Canucks. And then this one from Vince Mercogliano. Rangers morning skate this morning. Chris Kreider on the ice. Riley Smith is not. Kreider has missed the last couple of games due to injury. Riley Smith is someone that the Rangers have held out with the opportunity to trade him. He likely will be on the move before Friday. When we come back, Mike Russo joins us from The Athletic to talk about the Minnesota Wild and all things around the NHL. Mike Russo next here on First Shift. All right, here's a peek at the Central Division standings. You can see the Jets up top, Stars in pursuit. Minnesota Wild sitting there in the 3rd spot, but dealing with a lot of injuries, but hanging in there. Coming off a win over Seattle last night. And with that, let's bring in
Friend of the program, Mike Russo from The Athletic, covers the Wild, covers everything around the National Hockey League. It's been too long since we had him on, so I'm really glad to get you today. Mike, thanks for the time. And let's just start. We had the trade today with Tampa acquiring Gord and Bjorkstrand from Seattle. They got significant return back with a couple of first-round picks here in the deal. Give me your thoughts. You were in Seattle last night, so you saw these two players. Was there a buzz that they were going? I mean, what do you make of this deal?
Well, I do think that, everybody that was watching on Seattle last night, you wondered if they were going to be there in the next couple of days. What Adam Larson scored against the Wild last night, I thought that might have been his last goal with the Kraken. Who knows? I think Bjorkstrand made an incredible play for a breakaway that led to a penalty shot, and obviously Yanni Gord, for him to come back so soon after sports hernia surgery at the end of January. I think it shows you that he was ready to move on, and he gets to go back to a place where they know him really well, where he knows them. I think they've missed him since he was gone, that entire line, in fact. And I just think it's a great trade. You just saw last night that he was motivated to show that he was the same type of player. He was a thorn in the Wild side constantly throughout that game. And Tampa always makes big swings around the deadline. And here's another one, but from Julien Brisebois.
Yeah, big one from them. And from your side with Bill Guerin and the salary cap restrictions with Parise and Suter still on the books for this year, you get Gustav Nyquist. Not a lot of wiggle room probably to move in Minnesota. So you look at the depth, you look at the injuries, Kaprizov, Eriksson Ek, and on the blue line. Is this team deep enough and healthy enough to, not healthy enough, but deep enough with the current roster? They get the big 4-3 win last night. Only one shot on net, I believe, in the last half of the hockey game, which is quite stunning. Yeah. But are they able to find a way through these big injuries and qualify and get in there and be dangerous once it comes to the playoffs?
Well, I definitely think they're going to make the playoffs. It's just the question is always, are they going to be dangerous? This is a team that has won a first-round series since 2015. And, frankly, Billy, if they are healthy, if they get Kaprizov, Eriksson Ek, and Brodin back, I do think they have a chance I don't want to say be a cup contender or go on a run, but certainly win a round. I mean, right now they're playing they're staring Dallas in the face, and that usually never goes well. And that Jim Nill is going to pull something out of his hat here in the next couple of days before the deadline to load up that team. But they've got to get these guys back. And the reason why they don't have wiggle room at the deadline is because they are anticipating getting these guys back. If Eriksson Ek and or Brodin and or Kaprizov, one of those three, we're not going to be back by the end of the regular season, the Wild would actually be swimming in cap space and have a chance to make a big swing by Friday's deadline for a Brock Nelson, even a Brock Besser, and have him switch sides when the Wild play the Canucks on Friday. But right now, again, I checked in with Bill Guerin yesterday, and he is still operating under the belief that all three of these guys are going to be back, which means that they are not going to have cap space at the deadline. So it is imperative that they get healthy for them to go on a run. But the way that the season goes, the second they get them back, somebody else will go down. It's just been a remarkable season in terms of injuries for the Wild, and never bottom six guys or third pair guys. It's always their top guys at the worst possible time. And here they're dealing with it again with all three of those players.
Mike, take us through the big picture for a minute, because, Billy mentioned it, that, they're going to be phasing out, thankfully, of that era of really having all that dead money on their cap, right? So they're going to have room to operate. They've got to deal with getting new contract for some really important pieces of the puzzle. What's the big picture for the Wild? Because the cap is going up. It looks like it could go up substantially over the next 3 years. Yeah. It seems like good timing for Minnesota. What's that big picture viewpoint for management there?
Well, you're exactly right, E.J. I mean, first of all of us are tired of ever talking about these two buyouts for the rest of the time. Yeah. It's not just the coaches, it's not just the players, it's not just the managers, it's not the fans. I'm tired of writing about it. I'm tired of talking about it. And that's what it comes down to this summer, is that even if they had a ton of cap space here at the deadline, I'm not convinced that Billy would be willing to give up a ton of assets going forward this summer, or this deadline, because I think this summer he wants to go in with a clean slate and be loaded up with assets and try to make some moves. Not just potentially free agents like a Nelson or a Besser, but having a ton of money to re-sign Kirill Kaprizov and do some other business as well. So it has been all we've talked about the last 4 years. And I think it's finally a clean slate. Obviously, they're not going to have a ton of cap space because Kaprizov's going to earn $15 or $16 million, probably with an extension if he's willing to take something like that. And then, they never thought when they made the Fiala trade that when they got Brock Faber that he would immediately turn into an $8.5 million defenseman. So a lot of that money has been eaten up, but they got an incredible defenseman in Faber, and as long as Kaprizov's willing to buy in and stay, they've got a true superstar. So it is all about this summer and beyond right now for the Wild, because fans have grown fatigue of hearing about it and want this team to finally join the big boys in the NHL and be able to have flexibility to make significant roster moves.
And Mike, you were with us early days in the Florida Panthers, going way back. But what it seems to happen in Minnesota, outside of that, with the steps that they are making with Bill Guerin and John Hynes, when I look at the Minnesota Wild, there's a culture. There's an identity, which is important. There's a lot of teams around the league that don't know who they are, quite frankly. And when I watch John Hynes and Bill Guerin, what they're trying to do, there is a DNA with this Minnesota Wild team moving forward. How important has that been to this franchise?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And first of all, let me interject. I mean, one of my greatest thrills last year was covering the Florida Panthers for 2 months during that playoff run and seeing you on the ice lifting that cup. Guys like you and Luongo and Jovo and Rick Dudley, and it was just absolutely awesome. Randy Moeller, to see all the guys that were there from the very beginning lift that cup. So it was awesome. And that's what I hope one day to cover in Minnesota. Like, the fans deserve it. They're building something good here, but they really had to take while trying to win and not rebuild, they really put their foot on the brake here the last 4 years, because it was just, and it's really impressive the way that they've been able to be competitive during this 4-year run, and still, for the most part, make the playoffs and be one of the top teams in the league. But look, now it's the time with the cap going up to finally, show these fans the love and give them something that they deserve, and not just a playoff round win, which the fans would give anything for, but becoming a true cup contender and a powerhouse in the National Hockey League. They have everything they need. They have an incredible building, an incredible marketplace, really good players, an incredible prospect pool that the Athletic ranked second in the league. And now it's a time to put it all together for these fans to see something special, and not just for 1 year, but for many, many, many years. And I think that Bill Guerin and John Hynes could do it, but the excuses are off the table starting this summer. We're not going to be writing about Parisi and Suter and the handicap and handcuffs and every, term that you want to go with it. It's time for this team to, put up or shut up, and deliver something special to their fan base.
Mike, before I let you go, you're somebody, you're dialed in around this league. You've been doing this a long time, so I'll put you on the spot a little bit here in terms of just what you're hearing. Is there anything out there that you're hearing in terms of a player or a team that's going to really be more active than maybe we know going into Friday's deadline?
Well, obviously with Vegas right now having LTI to our space, you're expecting, and Kelly McCrimmon always finds a way to not only go after really good players, but guys that are going to fit in perfectly in Vegas. And I think that Kelly will probably do that as well. And I'm really expecting that Dallas, this is a window for them to do something special. They have a really quality team in a really powerhouse conference. And I just am expecting that Jim Nill is going to try to go get a right shot defenseman and probably a center. And so Brock Nelson makes a lot of sense for me going to Dallas. I think Winnipeg has a real shot here. They are a true cup contender this year. And obviously they've always got to compete with players putting Winnipeg on their no trade clause. But, if you're a pure rental that wants a chance to win a cup, even if you have Winnipeg on your no trade clause, I would waive it in a minute to go play for that team. There's something special brewing there. They are a quality hockey team with an incredible goaltender, great top four, some studs up front all over the ice. I think that those three teams in the West are going to make, the last couple of years it's been East doing a lot of big things at the deadline. I think it's going to be the West this year.
All right. So there you have it from Mike Russo. Mike, thanks so much for the time.
Great to see you, my friend, as always.
Yeah, great seeing you, Billy.
We appreciate it out in Vancouver. The Wild and Canucks play on Friday. Mike Russo. He's a good man.
Yes, he is.
He is dialed in. Coming up next, another good guy, Steve Kouleas joins us. He wants to talk about those plucky Ducks out in the West. That's next on First Shift.
Whack attack.
From live play-by-play to your favorite game day anthems and the biggest sports podcasts in the world, the iHeartRadio app lets you take it all with you wherever you go. Download the free iHeartRadio app today.
Here is a tweet from Pierre LeBrun. Hearing the Sabres and Jordan Greenway are finalizing a 2-year extension, around $4 million a season. Not bad for Greenway, who's only played in 26 games this year and has 8 points.
Good work if you can get it.
Good work if you can get it. And with that, we bring in the master of the discussion room from NHL Network Radio, Steve Kouleas. He joins us on Wednesdays. And Cooley, you know, the Sabres are trying to rebuild. There's a bunch of teams trying to rebuild. But you want to talk a little bit about the Anaheim Ducks, because you think they're positioned really well, and they had a nice win against the Oilers last night. They're sitting there 6 points out of a playoff spot right now. They got a game in hand on Calgary, who's sitting in that spot. They got to jump over a couple of teams, but you like the way they're set up.
I think they're, thanks for having me, guys. Took a high stick at Beer League. I'm trying to cover it up. Right. I'm trying to cover it up, but anyway, at the end of the day, thank God for the leftover makeup. At the end of the day, I'd rather be Anaheim than Boston, the Islanders, Buffalo, teams going into next season. I think they're positioned very well, whether they keep the Gudases of the world, Jacob Trouba. They got options with Zegras and Gibson, and they've got a core. Most people haven't even heard of Jackson Lacombe. They don't know what he's doing this year. He's been unbelievable coming out of the University of Minnesota. Minnesota product, Trevor Zegras, I mentioned, possible trade option. Everyone loves Leo Carlson, Troy Terry, Mason McTavish and company. And they got the veterans that they've kept, like Strome and Vetrano and other prospects. Remember when they got in trouble for getting Beckett Seneca 3rd overall? Well, he should have been on the World Junior team people are talking about, and he's having a great year in Oshawa. Olin Zellweger as well. Tristan Luneau is part of the system. So Lucas Dostal is a goalie. 94 goalies are played in the league this year. He's ranked number 3. So they've got options for either up to Friday or beyond. And I'd rather be the Ducks, gentlemen, than some of those teams that I mentioned. Pat Verbeek knows what it's like to build a winner. The veterans taking care of the kids. Maybe not exciting right now, but it will be in 365 days.
They're getting there.
Especially Leo Carlson, McTavish playing well. And,
Cutter Gauthier starting to find his way.
Is Zegras a part of this in the future? Is Zegras part of that? Nope. That's the one player that you're going to see that is not going to resemble that young core moving forward with the Ducks.
I think Pat Verbeek has an idea what it takes to win in the playoffs. I think it'll be a trade chip, and it's nothing against Trevor Zegras. A lot of teams will like him. There's talk that he wants to come east anyway, but I think we talk about hard hockey, heavy hockey, right, gentlemen, and what it takes to win in the playoffs. And I think he hasn't told me. He went tough on the contract negotiations with them. I think he believes he's 1 to 82, but not 83 and beyond. So I could see him being a trade chip.
Interesting. Well, he has been dinged up a lot in his career, and like I would agree with you. I think that he probably at some point he gets moved somewhere else, but I'm not giving up on Trevor Zegras as a player. I think in the right place, maybe a fresh start would be good for him. But he has had a lot of injuries, Cooley.
Yeah, I mean, the last 2 years, when you're wasting years at this age, I mean, look at a guy like Shane Wright who's turned it around. Remember everybody, what's wrong with Shane Wright? And he's finally got it going. I saw a great stat on the Seattle broadcast last night. Since January the 1st, he's got more points than anybody else in his draft class. And we have to remember these kids are young and maturing. Zegras started with more wow, coming out of the World Juniors and all the great moves and flips over top of the net. And then he stagnated with injuries. He'll be a very, very good player. I don't think a true franchise #1 center, but I think he can be a complementary piece to a very good team. I just don't see if it's going to be in Anaheim or he'll be further. I think he wants to be a center, not a winger, and I think Verbeek has enough options at center that they probably don't need him, guys.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. Obviously, the deadline's a couple days away, but I think you're right. Maybe that's something that waits for the summer. We'll see. Let me ask you about the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, they threw a scare into poor Billy Lindsay last year. They were down 3-0 in the final. Billy was making his, he was planning his parade and enjoying, and all of a sudden, bing, bang, boom, and go to a 7th game. Thankfully for Billy, the Panthers did win. But the Oilers, they had a great stretch from like November through right around just as we started the Four Nations break. And then since then, the wheels have fallen off. I mean, what's going on with the Oilers as we sit here 2 days from the deadline?
They lost the first game before the break. McDavid was away, rested. He was fine last night. The rest of the team wasn't. And it's been an unmitigated disaster since the Four Nations break. What are they, 1-5 overall? I think the Oilers, Apollo 13, gentlemen, was last summer. Last summer, going and losing Holloway, losing Broberg, going Jeff Skinner, Victor Arvidsson, and not addressing the defense then has left them with a situation now where John Klingberg by himself is not the answer. There's still a defenseman short. They bring Trent Frederick in, who's not healthy now. Hopefully he will be. Makes me go, what's going on with Evander Kane? Is that a trade option? Is he going to be part of this team moving up front? But they put themselves in a difficult position by not executing in the summer. That's kind of their Apollo 13. And the goaltending right now scares me. The defense scares. They need somebody to play with Darnell Nurse. So if it's Kulak, Klingberg as the 5-6, they need a 4. Whether Brandon Carlos for sale, Connor Murphy, Radko Gudas, you start going down the list. But right now, something is off. It's a miss in oil country, and not just last night and not just out of the break. I'd be very worried if I was an Oiler fan right now. They are not clicking, and the summer wasn't good to them, Bill.
No, and Cooley, here we got to see the Stanley Cup rematch a couple of games ago in Florida, and what stood out to me was noticeably the pace, the speed. Connor McDavid and those guys are going to bring speed down deep in the lineup. You look at those subtractions, and Fogle, Holloway, McLeod, all those guys can turn and burn and get up the ice. Arvidsson, Skinner, maybe not so much. Podkolzin's been okay. But in Boston play, so speed was a main issue to me. And the penalty kill that was unbelievable late last year into the playoffs. And that Stanley Cup, it was full attack mode. Boom, go.
They were scoring.
And scoring shorthanded goals. There was no room to operate on the power play the other night when the Panthers had the power play. All of a sudden, there's this soft 4-man box just collapsed. They weren't coming after you at all. You see the penalty killing percentage has dipped a lot. Is it the same question, maybe even worse this year for the Oilers in the third and fourth lines, and the penalty kill has taken a step backwards?
I think you've nailed it. And Billy, you're bored there. Wouldn't you trade the people on the right for the people on the left?
Yes.
They did the opposite, Costanza. They did the opposite. They got worse. So to me, unless they save something or somebody elevates their game, most notably the defense and really Stuart Skinner, to get to the form when he was on a roll last year. His October was terrible this year, and his February in between was very good. December, January was very, very good. The league average is .901. You can't even give me the league average, and you want these two guys to win 16 games? I don't think so. The fact that they went all the way there, -1 win last year was great. That was last year. The Oilers are not as good. And if I'm the Kings and I get the Oilers for the 4th year in a row, I think I might want them this year more than the previous 3.
And here's the question, Cooley. Put on your GM hat, and you're this close. The Panthers went to the Stanley Cup final. You're this close. So you're looking, what do I add and not take away? When you get to that close to a championship, you got a really solid locker room and a belief that you're on the tip of the iceberg, and you got Connor McDavid, one of the greatest players trying to win a Stanley Cup. Aren't you just trying to maybe add to this and take as little away as possible instead of these wholesale changes that might end up backfiring? It seems like a strange move. When you have to get that far, you have to have players that believe in each other and trust each other. And you just throw a bunch of it out and bring a bunch in and said, okay, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, make it work again. Draisaitl and McDavid have to have some frustration.
I totally agree with you. And the key about the names that you've shown, most, if not all of those guys, played in Game 7. You believed in them enough to dress them in Game 7 to win a cup, and then have not retained most of them with the offer sheet and everything else. Remember, there was a management change. So Kenny left and the new guys came in, and maybe they were under behind the 8 ball to start and didn't know the personnel as well. The end result is the summer might cost them unless they can save it, but to keep going back to the well, and 97 and 29, and I mean, even Zach Hyman yesterday, I watched Zach Hyman. He's not the same guy. He's not the same guy either. So I'd be worried. I think it's fair to worry. There's time, and if you're going to go 1-5 in your last 6, yeah, do it in February and March. Don't do it in April or May, or you're out.
Yeah, Billy, you made a great point about all those speed players.
Yeah,
because when I look at that wall, that's a lot of speed players. I didn't like letting go of the defenseman and the forward, Holloway and Broberg. I thought they both, especially Broberg, this is a young defenseman that you're nurturing, that you drafted, and then just let somebody take them, and then you're signing Jeff Skinner and Arvidsson, who guys are at the, kind of on the other side of it.
And when they came back from that 3-0 deficit, McDavid and Draisaitl were playing well, but it was the underlying support that really got going for Edmonton. And it started to be those third and fourth lines where Chris Knobloch could trust those players. And that's when I thought, wow, we're in a little bit of trouble here. There's some depth that's starting to attack our team that I didn't see from this Oilers squad. And I talked about it. That penalty kill was a big addition.
Big deal.
And a lot of those players that left were big parts of the penalty kill.
All right, listen, Cooley, before we let you go, let's get to the top of the Atlantic. You've been talking about it a lot this year, and I agree with you. You know, the team, somebody needs to win. You know, you need to win this division. It's just that 2-3 matchup will make the path very difficult. And I think the Leafs, I agree with you on this. I think the Leafs are the team that need it more than the other two, than Florida or Tampa, but it's tight up top. The Leafs have been playing great. They still can't pull away. Panthers just added Seth Jones. Lightning have made some moves. I mean, for the Leafs, I mean, it'll be an interesting couple days to see what Brad Treliving does to kind of improve this roster if he can.
Yeah, for the Leafs, this is the meal, Banya, and soup isn't going to cut it. It is going to have to be something big, and by big is a third-line center and a number 6 defenseman to play with Simone Benoit. And nothing against Connor Timmins, but it's to push Timmins down as a depth guy. And the same list of right-handed defensemen to fill in that spot. To move Domi over, any trade for a third-line center defenseman would probably involve 89 in Nick Robertson. So Domi would move over, and McMahon could go up or down, probably up, Holmberg down, and then a third-line center. And you've heard names like Shen and Scott Lawton and Yanni Gord. That would help. And then something on the right side in a 5-6. The rest is done. The goalies are checkmark. Top 6 is a checkmark. Tanev coming in and playing so well when he's healthy, and he's not right now. So Myers and Timmins, for me, as they're in kind of the 4 and 6 spot, would be depth players when Tanev does come back, and he will, and play with McCabe, and then somebody else there to play with Simone Benoit. And then that's it. Then you got to perform in the playoffs. And the route for the Maple Leafs, the Route 67, would be slightly easier by playing Detroit or Columbus in the first round. If they go through Florida, I don't believe they can go through 8 games to win against those 2 teams and then play Washington. They would need, those other teams don't care. They've got the rings and the bling bling. The Leafs do not. And then the playoffs, they've saved some of their worst hockey for April and early May, as you know, Bill.
And if there is a first round or second round exit this year, again, for the Maple Leafs, what happens now in the offseason? How do you change the dynamic with the core year after year that has been there? What changes would you make in the offseason if you have an early playoff exit for the Leafs?
I think the real truth is it's like Thelma and Louise. They're holding hands and then going over the cliff. And then at that point, you're going to have to judge what you're doing with Marner, how well he plays, Tavares, money. There's so much in play. I think they're worried about elimination after they get eliminated and are hoping for the best. They've had really good teams in the Matthews-Marner administration, but they've had one moment. John Tavares spinorama. That's not going to be good enough, and then Brad Treliving will have to figure it out. They've had really good teams, like the Calgary Flames, until 89 finally came around. The Leafs are hoping it's 89 like the Flames, and they can go on some type of run. But I'll tell you right now, going through Florida, that would be extremely difficult for this group.
Yeah, no question. And Tampa as well. They're playing great hockey. You got any picks for tonight? I mean, I know you got the light right there next to you.
Yeah, I'm in a bit of a slump, so I'm going like Stamkos.
I didn't want to bring it up.
Yeah, so here's my prediction. After this segment, I'm going to the beer store.
Okay.
That I can guarantee.
There you go.
Stock the fridge.
All right.
What's the go-to? What's the go-to?
It's called the beer store. We have to go to the beer store to get beer.
What's the beer of choice?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm still a Molson Canadian guy, even though they seem to not respond to my DMs for some reason.
Okay.
Oh, well, there you go. You just gave him a little free plug there, so that's nice to see. All right, Cooley, you have a good night. Stock up and enjoy the evening.
Have a great one, Cooley.
All right, Steve Kouleas from NHL Network Radio. When we come back, Gabe Landeskog. Boy, it's been such a long time since he's played. He's still trying to push towards coming back at some point. We'll talk about Landeskog next on First Shift. Interesting tweet from Bleacher Report. What happens when you lose your identity, the one thing you've always known? The past 2 years, Gabe Landeskog has had a camera crew following him, documenting his recovery and attempt to make an NHL return. A Clean Sheet premieres this Sunday, and that'll be TNT. And looking forward to that. Gabriel Landeskog has not played a game in the NHL since Game 6 of the Cup Final when they won the Cup, June 26, 2022. Battling a very difficult injury, trying to make it back. It'll be interesting to watch.
It will be fun to watch, and that's the heart and soul of NHL players, to dig that kind of deep and miss a couple of years and believe that maybe you have a chance to come back. That's how much the game means to them. That's what drives the athlete. That's what makes them successful. There's always this internal drive. Enforce yourself. Well, identity, what's my identity now is to get back and see if I can get back to an NHL player and an elite NHL player. Will see where Landeskog is at in that recovery.
Love to see him play again. I hope it happens for him. And then finally, as we wrap up the show today, Alex Ovechkin promoting this the Grade 8 chase for victory over cancer. And Ovi is going to donate money after each goal while chasing the Gretzky record. To sum it up, by the end of it, he will donate roughly $10,000 to Hockey Fights Cancer and the V Foundation. So putting a little bit of money behind this big chase, one of the great records in sports.
A little more incentive to chase. It is always good to give back. Ovechkin has been a great ambassador for the game right there with Sidney Crosby. Since he came back, it's hard to imagine that he's on the verge of this record. To put it in perspective, and the cancer and everything, go for it. Let's get it done. But to score on the verge of 900 goals eventually, that would be 20 years of 45 goals. You'd have to 20 years straight. You'd have to score 45 goals.
Wow.
Try and wrap your brain around that.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, you have to stay healthy, you have to stay productive. He's been able to do it.
Best goal scorer
this year, he's having one of the best years of his career, even with missing time with injury and being later in his career.
Wayne, get the private jet fueled up.
Yeah.
You might be traveling around at the end of the year.
So good to see Ovi giving back here, and as I say, going to give money for each of the goals leading up to breaking that record, and up to, I think it'll be around $10,000. So they say there's no math in these shows, and for good reason when I'm involved, because I am not.
I'm behind you on that one, too.
Really
so
not.
If you're ahead of me, then.
Not good on math. Neither one of us.
We really got some problems.
Neither one of us. So looking forward to.
We can add up the golf scorecard. That's it. As long as we do that, then
that's it. 2 days to the deadline. NHL Now is next. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, Billy.
Thank you.